I always believed that after 30 years of marriage, two people eventually become experts at reading each other. The way a person sighs when they're tired, the way they stir their coffee when something is bothering them, the way their eyes look when they're hiding something. When you spend decades with someone, you'd think there are no secrets left. That was what I believed about my husband, Daniel. For 30 years, I thought I knew the man I married. I thought we had built a life based on loyalty, respect, and quiet partnership. I was wrong. Our 30th wedding anniversary was approaching, and Daniel insisted we celebrate it properly. He said it should be special, something memorable. He suggested a large dinner party at our home with friends, colleagues, and even some extended family. At first, I was surprised because Daniel had never been the type to enjoy big gatherings. He preferred quiet dinners and weekends at home. But this time, he seemed unusually enthusiastic. 30 years only happens once, he said one evening while scrolling through his phone. We should celebrate it with everyone. I smiled and agreed. Part of me felt proud that we had reached such a milestone. 30 years of marriage in today's world was rare. Still, something about Daniel felt different in those weeks before the party. He had started dressing more carefully, buying new shirts and expensive cologne. He spent more time out of the house, claiming he had late meetings at work. When I asked about the anniversary plans, he always said not to worry because he had everything under control. One afternoon, I walked into the living room while he was on the phone. He quickly ended the call when he saw me. It was a small moment, but something about the tension in his face made me pause. "Work?" I asked casually. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Just work." But the answer felt rehearsed. For a brief moment, an uncomfortable thought crossed my mind. Was Daniel planning something romantic? Maybe a surprise trip? Maybe a renewal of vows? I pushed away any darker suspicions because after 30 years, you don't want to believe your partner could betray you. The night of the anniversary party arrived. Our house looked beautiful. Soft lights glowed across the garden, and a long dining table had been set up under a canopy outside. The air smelled like roses and fresh food. Friends arrived dressed elegantly, carrying gifts and bottles of wine. Everyone kept congratulating us for reaching 30 years together. "You two are an inspiration," one of Daniel's colleagues said with a laugh. Daniel smiled proudly and wrapped an arm around me. I smiled back, but the strange feeling in my chest hadn't disappeared. As the evening went on, I noticed Daniel checking his watch repeatedly. His eyes kept drifting toward the front gate, as if he were waiting for someone important. Around 8 o'clock, the moment arrived. A sleek black car pulled up outside our house. Out stepped a woman I had never seen before. She looked young, probably in her late 20s, with long blonde hair and a tight red dress that seemed designed to attract attention. She walked confidently toward the garden, as if she already belonged there. Daniel's face lit up. My stomach dropped. He walked over to greet her, placing a hand on her back in a way that felt far too familiar. Then he guided her toward the table where everyone was seated. "Everyone," Daniel said loudly, raising his glass for attention, "before we continue the celebration, I want to introduce someone important." The guests quieted down. I felt my heart begin to pound. "This," Daniel said, placing his arm around the young woman, "is Vanessa." The way he said her name made something inside me go cold. Vanessa smiled brightly at the crowd. Daniel continued as if he were delivering a speech at a business conference. "I believe honesty is important," he said, "and I believe both Linda and I deserve happiness. Vanessa and I have been seeing each other for some time now, and we plan to start a new life together." My ears rang. 30 years of marriage had just been dismissed in a few cold sentences. Someone at the table whispered, "This is unbelievable." Daniel finally looked at me again. "I hope you understand," he said. For a long moment, I said nothing. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure how to react. Then Daniel added something that made the situation even worse. "Of course, Linda will need to make arrangements to move out soon. Vanessa and I plan to live here." The words hung in the air like a slap. Several guests looked at me with sympathy. Daniel clearly believed that I would be humiliated, that I would cry or argue in front of everyone. But something strange happened instead. I felt calm. Not sad, not angry, just calm. I slowly stood up from my chair and picked up my glass of water. The sound of the glass touching the table made everyone quiet. "Daniel," I said softly. He looked relieved that I was finally speaking. "Yes? I have just one question." He nodded confidently. "Go ahead." I tilted my head slightly. "When exactly were you planning to tell Vanessa the truth?" His face faded. "What truth?" "The truth about this house." The silence that followed felt electric. Daniel blinked. "Of course it's my house," he said quickly. "We bought it together." I shook my head slowly. "No," I said, "we didn't." Several people leaned forward in their chairs. Daniel's voice grew irritated. "Linda, this isn't the time for jokes." "I agree, which is why I should probably clarify something." I turned to face the guests. 30 years ago, when Daniel and I got married, my parents gave me a wedding gift. They bought this house, but they placed it entirely in my name. The guests gasped quietly. Daniel laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous," he said. I reached into the small drawer of the outdoor table where I had placed a folder earlier. Inside were several documents. I slid the top paper across the table toward him. "The property deed," I said. Daniel stared at it. Then his eyes widened. The color drained from his face as he read the name printed on the document. "Mine. Only mine." "This must be some kind of mistake," he said weakly. "It isn't," I replied calmly. "You mean this house belongs to you?" "Yes," I said. Daniel shook his head rapidly. "No, no, no," he muttered. "That's impossible." "It's actually very simple," I said. "My parents believed financial security was important, so they made sure the house remained legally mine." One of Daniel's friends leaned back in his chair with an astonished expression. "So, if they divorce, Daniel doesn't own any part of the house?" "Correct," I said. The entire atmosphere of the party changed. The confident man who had planned to humiliate his wife suddenly looked like someone who had just fallen through thin ice. Daniel's voice rose in panic. "Linda, we've been married for 30 years. That house is half mine." I shook my head gently. "Legally, it isn't." Vanessa stepped away from him slightly. "You told me this was your house," she said quietly. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "It is," he insisted weakly. "It has to be." I folded the papers neatly and placed them back in the folder. "Daniel," I said, "if you want a divorce, that's your decision, but there's one detail you seem to have forgotten." He looked at me helplessly. "What detail?" I met his eyes calmly. "If you want to start a new life with Vanessa," I paused for a moment, "you'll need to find somewhere else to live." A few guests couldn't hide their laughter. Vanessa's face turned red with embarrassment. Daniel looked around desperately, as if hoping someone would defend him. No one did. The entire dramatic plan he had carefully arranged had collapsed within 5 minutes. Vanessa grabbed her purse. "I think I should leave," she said sharply. Daniel reached for her arm. "Wait, Vanessa." But she pulled away. "You lied to me." Then she walked out of the garden without looking back. The black car drove away minutes later. Daniel stood in the center of the garden, surrounded by silent guests. 30 years of marriage had ended that night, but not in the way he had planned.